Hello, welcome to North Lanarkshire Live. It's Lockdown Live. It's day 325 on the lockdown. Anyone watching from outside North Lanarkshire would say, why are they calling lockdown 325? Because, we've been out of lockdown and things like that. But do you know what? North Lanarkshire has not been out of lockdown since the 23rd of March last year. So for us, broadcasting tonight, it is day 325. A lot of stuff happening in the news this week. Too much to go into. But what's really heating up is May 21, because what's going to happen there is it's all going to come to a head with the election in Holyrood. People are talking about the new independence parties coming up. We had UKIP in there talking the other week. We had the Lockdown Party. We've had the Freedom Alliance and the Family Party. Things like a lot of new parties in existence. Now, all of the parties that we've had on so far that are new parties have been pro-union. So tonight what we've got on is we've got another one of the newer parties that has just come to existence in recent months, and that is the ISP, that's the Independence for Scotland Party. And tonight we're very lucky to have the leader of the party with us to talk to us, and that's Colette Walker. Hello, Colette.
Hi Martin, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. We did a technical test before this and we couldn't get Colette's video, but fantastically what happens is you go away, you switch the computer off, you switch it back on, and everything works. So Colette, could you just give us a little bit of background on the Independence for Scotland Party?
Okay, the Independence for Scotland Party was really thought about last year, probably over a year ago now, way over a year ago. Myself and a few other people were talking about a regionalist party and how that would actually help with the route to independence, the way our voting system works. So a few of us got together and really looked into how we set up a political party, and then we decided just to go ahead and actually stop talking about it and actually do it. So last January we submitted our application to the Electoral Commission and we were approved in May of this year.
So you're pro-independence. Now, when we had Julie McAnulty on, who's part of your party as well, last year, we talked to her about the fact is, coming up to the Holyrood election, you will be hit hard, not only by the unionist voters saying, no, you've got to vote for these parties to save the union, but you will also get hit hard by pro-independence party of the SNP saying, vote SNP 1 and 2. That's the only way to achieve independence. And it became we posted this post that we were going to talk to you tonight in a couple of pro-independence groups to say, look, this is happening. And it was very much a Monty Python response in terms of just shouts of splitters. And it's got to that level. How would you respond to that sort of commentary?
I think if people understand the voting system that we've had in Scotland since we've had the Scottish Parliament, they actually know that the way it's designed with your first vote is first past the post, and then the second one is your regional representation. I think people know that it was designed so that not one political party can take majority in both votes, and over recent years of the election, even if you go back to 2003 election when Labour were the main contenders for the constituency, that let in SNP when they were really just getting a lot of the majority of regional list seats, and the Greens, Solidarity and some even independent people that came forward to run for election. So it's always been the case that if you gain seats in the first past the post, it actually goes against you when it comes to the regional list because of the system that we have here in Scotland.
So there's a couple of pro-independence parties, because you guys are just standing on the list. You're not looking to compete with the SNP on the constituency seats. Is that correct?
No, and that's the reason. That's the reason why we're not contesting any constituency seats, because we don't want to split the vote. We want not just a majority. We want a supermajority. So, by all the polls that have been out recently, the SNP are polling to gain constituency seats from 2016, which means then that they are going to really struggle to even get maybe even one regional list out of the 4 that they've only got just now. So for us to run in the constituency would make absolutely no sense, and that would split the vote. Whereas we're only running in the regional because we know that the SNP are not going to be gaining anything in the regional list. So if we're wanting to look for a 2/3 majority in Holyrood, then we really need the more pro-independent parties to gain in the region.
Now, of course, you guys endorsed the plebiscite vote
Yes.
as well. Now, what happens if the SNP turn around in their manifesto and there's no plebiscite vote, and there's not even a real call to say that if we're denied Section 30, that we'll just call a wildcat vote? What if they go really? What if the SNP went soft on independence? Would you be then compelled to then start thinking in the future, well, we have to start standing in constituency seats?
Well, I was hoping with the plebiscite petition that we put out, we were asking the SNP and the Greens to have the plebiscite as part of their manifesto. Whether they take that up or not is up to themselves. We are fully supporting a plebiscite election. If we get a 2/3 majority, a supermajority in Holyrood, that actually gives us legal rights to actually call a snap election, and it could be a plebiscite for independence as well. So the plebiscite can work even after the May's election if we get a 2/3 majority. It actually bypasses Westminster. We have a legal right with a 2/3 majority to then call a snap election.
So that would be one of your plans. Now, obviously, you're pro-independent, so that's where you align with the SNP, but where does the ISP differ from the SNP?
Well, there's, like every political party, I think, we're going to agree on some things and we're going to disagree on other things. That's politics and that's democracy. I think a lot of people know that we oppose the GRA reform bill and the hate crime bill. We support women's rights, single-sex safe spaces. There's other policies that are going to come forward in the future that we're going to agree on and we're going to disagree on. That happens in any political unit. So I'm not going to identify all of them because at the end of the day, we are working on our own manifesto at the present moment. So at the present, we're just going to concentrate on what we want to put forward to the electorate just now and show them what we stand for.
Now, of course, Julie McAnulty, who's in your party, was quite well known in North Lanarkshire. She was obviously ex-SNP. Is there a lot of ex-SNP people that have actually gone to the ISP?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of ex-SNP that's came to ISP, but what is encouraging though is there's quite a few that have never been part of a political party ever that have joined us as well, because they feel that they can identify themselves with what we stand for, and they feel comfortable, and they've came forward and they've joined us, and quite a few of them are very actively involved, which is great. So they've went from basically being just a voter and maybe watching the news and keeping up with politics via any social media or whatever, but actually now being actively involved in a political party and wanting to actually make some difference within Scotland, and especially trying to gain Scottish independence.
Now, obviously, Alliance for Independence has been on just before Christmas, and they were talking about trying to get the smaller pro-independence parties together and work together across the board to, take most advantage from the D'Hondt system. Have you been in any discussions with them?
They approached us a long time ago, way before they were approved. They've only been approved by the Electoral Commission last week. So there was no reason at that point to even have discussions, because they didn't exist, and we had to focus on what we were doing and build up the ISP as a party and build up our membership and set up our branches and start the vetting process and everything, because time is ticking by. We're already now in February, which is quite extraordinary considering, we've been going for the past 10 months. Time's just flying by. We couldn't hold on to see what was happening with them, and we really wanted to stand as ourselves on the ballot paper so that people actually understand what they're actually voting for and who they're voting for. I think with the AFI, you won't actually know who's behind the AFI on the ballot paper, who the candidates really are and what they stand for. So at least with a political party, you actually can look them up and see what their policies are and see who's behind the party and what they stand for.
Yeah, but you can see here where there becomes an issue now where, because there is a few pro-independence parties that have now appeared. So you've got Alliance for Independence, you've obviously got still the Greens. There's also Scotia Future as another party in existence, and yourself. So there is a point where it's going to become split. Now, is that going to be an issue as well, and not including the SNP list votes? How do you convince people that you are the party to vote for? What are you going to bring to the Parliament to push forward independence?
Well, really, when I said looking back to 2003, there was about 4 different independent voting parties that got regional list seats. So the way it's designed, there is room for other independence voting parties. What would be useful is if the SNP are, as I say, are polled to gain more seats. They will have a majority government by just the constituency seats alone. It would be useful if they then possibly stood aside and let the other pro-independence parties actually run in the regional to try and get this supermajority that I just spoke about. Again, it's all about democracy though, Martin. At the end of the day, we have to give people choice. Independence, if we're talking about independence here, and that's what the clue is in the name, Independence for Scotland, that's what we are thriving for. We're thriving for an independent Scotland. But the voters out there should really have a choice, and we're giving them that choice. It shouldn't be about one person or one party. They should be able to look and decide what one they feel more affiliated to regarding the policies. It shouldn't just be always about lending one party your vote. You should feel comfortable that you're voting for the right person, the right party, for the right reason. And in the regional list, you are voting for a party, you're not voting just for an actual candidate like you are in the constituency vote. So it really is about democracy. You're giving people the choice. There's policies that people are not happy with the SNP or the Greens. So they might then feel that they feel more affiliated to us. As I said about the AFI, they don't have other policies other than independence. So you have to think, well, you're maybe voting in somebody for 5 years in Parliament that you don't know really what their policies and what their views are on certain subjects. So are you willing to take that chance on voting for somebody in 5 years that you voted in, but maybe have the complete opposite views to you? So But it's about democracy. You need to give people a choice, and I think it's quite encouraging that people are getting more involved and more engaged in politics. That people are coming forward to actually go ahead and set up a political party. But you've got to remember, AFI isn't a political party per se. It's an alliance. It's an umbrella.
Well, we should point out that their name is actually Action for Independence. Because bizarrely, the Electoral Commission told them that they couldn't use the term alliance. Even though we had the Freedom Alliance on recently. So I don't know how that came about.
All these independent. It's about. There's quite a lot, but but it is good that people are getting involved in politics and are feeling passionate enough to, to actually stop talking about it and actually doing something about it.
Now, obviously, you mentioned the Gender Recognition Act. Now, that is, I'm always scared to talk about it on the internet because I've seen the reaction that it gets when people talk about it on the internet. Because obviously that's a problem that's going forward in the SNP. They have a lot of problems with some people that are signing what's called the Women's Pledge and things like that, and speaking out about it. And there seems to be a lot of backlash and a lot of heated terminology thrown at each other when it comes to speaking on it. So what is wrong with the Gender Recognition Act in your party's opinion?
Well, there is already the Gender Recognition Act there. This is a reform. It's about, we're opposing self-ID. That's the main thing. What we're saying is the reform is not giving transgender people any more legal rights than what they have already, because trans reassignment is a protected characteristic within the Equality Act, just like I am as a woman, and also that I am as a disabled woman, because they are protected characteristics within the Equality Act. So sex is protected, women are protected, and gender reassignment is protected. Gender on its own isn't. So the self-ID part, which they're wanting to bring in, can actually cause a whole load of issues. But it just means then that, for example, a man can then say that he identifies as a woman, and after 3 months, he then can have a birth certificate given to him that verifies that he was born female. But he hasn't actually done anything to change in himself. So he can just identify as a female without any form of consultation, counselling, etc. So after 3 months, he gets a birth certificate. But also, it can affect. It not only affects just women and children. It can actually affect the whole of society. Like I've got a disabled son who is in social care, so he's disabled. And so he's protected, but because I use social care to support him, then it would mean then I would have no say if I then asked for an all-female support team, because if somebody then gained a birth certificate after 3 months when they just self-identified as female, I couldn't say anything, but they appeared to me as a biological male body. So it has huge implications for a lot of people in society. So it's not, yes, women especially, but, there's your elderly mother or your elderly father, grandfather that might be using social care.
Again, I feel uncomfortable talking about it because, I'm very ignorant on the subject. Firstly, I do know that I am cisgender, which is a new term that I've only recently heard. But
you're a biological male.
Yeah, being a male middle-aged white person talking about women's rights and talking about transgenders' rights. I'm terrified to get accused of being mansplaining. Just so it's not so there's a problem for me there. But when I look at the conversations that go online, on one hand it's people screaming that it's going to open the door to predators, and then there's the other side saying that is just transphobic and bigotry, and it just seems to bounce back and forward, and there seems to be no ground for someone like myself, who's a bit of an idiot in the subject, going, what about this? What about that? Without being accused of something from either side. Because obviously, as you say, there are people that are transgender, and they need support and they need their rights protected. And as soon as you mentioned that there is, as you say, with self-ID, there is that level of where I could say I'm a woman, and just pretend that I've identified a woman with no intention of actually, or no medical reason or any background. I might be offending people by even just talking right now, but do you know what I mean? In terms of that, I find it very confusing. I think there needs to be more discussion with people that have no idea what's going on, in terms of someone sitting down and explaining to me what's going on with the whole issue.
And as I say, the self-ID is the main issue, and a lot of trans people are, keep saying, don't jump on our bandwagon. They're not happy with it. I've been in conversations with quite a few trans people that have even tried, are trying to detransition because they felt it was the right thing for them, and they then realised it wasn't. And even they're getting called names when they try to express their journey, their experience of it all, and they don't want things to be made easier. They want more support out there. But as I say, trans reassignment is a protected characteristic within the Equality Act. So they're not actually gaining anything. They're not gaining anything, but it's going to impact on other aspects of society, such as women and the disabled. Now, again, we've got this issue that people are already starting to self-identify as disabled as well. So as a disabled woman and who has a disabled son, that is going to have a huge impact on our lives, because we have spent so many years, and we still are, trying to fight equality, trying to fight accessibility in society, whether it be education, whether it be accommodation. That could all be affected by somebody that comes along, and if, say, for example, I'm looking into apprenticeships for additional needs school leavers, so that if they can't go into further education or they're not very academic, they could possibly be enrolled in some sort of an apprenticeship for, say, a new environmental Green Deal, like whether it's joinery, glazier, forestry, whatever it was going to be that we need for in the future to be more green. Well, if somebody comes along and just self-identifies as disabled, then the person that is generally disabled and maybe can't speak up for themselves, and they could get brought down the ladder. It could have huge issues for people that are just trying to make the most of their lives and try and better themselves.
Would there be a possibility? Would there be a possibility then with self-identification of disability, where people accessing disability benefits then maybe haven't got the right to do? Because I mean, there already is quite stringent. Disabled people in Britain, although they've got equal rights, they have to go through a lot of demeaning stuff in terms of the benefit system and getting supports and things like that, where you're getting turned down and put through tests just to prove that you are. So, are you suggesting that there might be a possibility that might get scrapped as well then?
No, I think they will probably keep them as is quite, that we will need to keep assessments going to some sort of degree, because you have to check. People will still try and get some benefits. It's always been the case. But if it's something like an apprenticeship, and where you're going to maybe get off unemployment benefit, or you're going to be able to get a skill and maybe get paid some money, then if there was that, they could use that to their, if it was to gain in their to their advantage. And it's also, I think you heard possibly over the past couple of weekends about the regional lists with the SNP putting 4 lists, the top list seats for BAME and 4 for disabled. So that again can bring people.
I find that strange that BAME, which I had to look up again because I'm not wise in the ways of the world, a Black Asian minority ethnicity.
Ethnic.
So the fact that that's self-ID as well, I found a bit terrifying.
Yeah, well, there's also that is already been done down south. That people are identifying as that as well. So it does have implications. And when people in minority groups are already every day struggling to get equality, it isn't good. It's not going to give people the confidence to go out and try and better themselves, or because they're going to get hit at every occasion if somebody can just come along and say, I identify as, for their own personal gain. We don't want personal gain. People that are in minority groups just want a bit of support. They want a bit of equality. We don't want a huge big fuss made of us. We just want a bit of equality and to get on with our lives as independently as we possibly can in a fair society. And I don't think self-identifying is something that you're not. I believe me, I would love not to be registered blind. I would love my son not to be registered blind. My son doesn't see at all. I would love my son to have sight and see the world. I'd love my son not to be autistic. But he's not, and for all he gets, when people talk about benefits, for all he gets in benefits, I'd gladly give that away so he could go out and live his life in this world and have a career and travel the world and, and be in a relationship and, go out with his friends to the pubs whenever that happens in the future. But, I would love for him to have that type of lifestyle and gladly give you back your PIP, your 500 and odd pound, a month or whatever it is, because having a disability or a long-term health condition, it actually costs a lot of money for adaptations, for, equipment, specialised equipment, etc. For example, a talking microwave costs anything from £250 onwards. It's a niche market. So having a disability or a long-term health condition actually costs a lot of money in society to actually live an independent life. And that's all we want.
Yeah. So moving on, the other policy that the SNP is one of their main ones at the moment is the hate crime bill, and of course that's another place where you diverge from the SNP in terms of your policies. So what's wrong with the hate crime bill in the view of the ISP?
Well, everybody should be allowed freedom of speech, as long as it's as long as we're respectful, and it's not enticing violence. But people should actually be allowed to have their say. And how are they going to, for example, it's one of the aspects of it is that you're not able to have a conversation in your house, or otherwise it might be a crime to actually say something that's in this bill. Well, how are they going to police that? How are they going to man what you talk about in your own home? It makes no sense. So you're talking about something whether it's even to do with disability or to do with the GRA, whatever it might well be, doesn't matter. There's so many forms of the hate crime bill that if you were just talking about it, then seemingly you're breaking the law. How do you manage that? But people should be allowed to have their freedom of speech, as I say, as long as it doesn't entice or provoke any threat to violence. We all should be able to have our say and have an opinion on something. We might not all agree with what each other are saying, but we should be respectful that everybody has their own opinion.
Yeah, I think there's because you said at the start about cause and offence, and I personally don't see the problem with cause and offence. I think people that cause offence, sometimes it can be a good thing. If we restrict people's speech, they tend to speak in much more polite terms, and we don't know, because if someone's talking politely, they could be thinking offensively, and you want to know. So like political parties that can't come out and be openly racist, even though a lot of time they could be identified as being openly racist just by some of the policies and the way they talk. It's a lot harder for a lot of people to identify that because they're not allowed to speak in those terms. Whereas if they did, people would be able to spot them straight away and say, well, actually, I don't want to vote for that person. As soon as you start quelling people's speech, you start hiding people that are actually offensive, and you want to know when someone's offensive because you want, well, generally you don't want to talk to them, or you want to educate them and try and help them. Whereas everyone is forced to think a certain way, I think you get into this Orwellian sort of neighbourhood of things.
I think it's a good thing to actually have a discussion with somebody and try and learn from where they're coming from, and you can actually educate each other on a topic. But I think too many people get too aggressive and they're wanting everything very PC, and it's something that I've had to deal with over the years. A lot of bullying to do with my disability, and a lot of name calling, and again, years and years ago, before even the Equality Act, when I was at school and everything, the names you got called if you wore glasses, or because I couldn't see the board very well. The names I used to get called, that just wouldn't be allowed anymore. We are protected. But again, it's about educating people, and there's a way about discussing certain issues. But you still, as a democracy, we are allowed our opinion. And as I say, we might not agree, but we have to respect it. We have to respect each other. We can agree to disagree, but we shouldn't entice any hatred with it. But a lot of what's in the hate crime bill, it can't be policed, it can't be manned, it can't be managed very well. So what is the point? And there's already, law there that if you do harm anybody within the Equality Act and all the protected characteristics as well, then you are breaking the law, and that can be reported, it can be dealt with. So a lot of characteristics are already protected. So it just doesn't work. So there's a lot of amendments going through, but I don't see it. We would just be opposing it anyway, the way it stands.
So moving on. So Holyrood 21. How many candidates will be available to be voted for in Central region? How many seats are you hoping for?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. At the present moment, our vetting process is going ahead. It's near enough at completion. So our candidates that have been approved, I think we're on the very latter part of the vetting process. So when the candidates all know that they've been approved, we will be announcing them. And then it'll be up to the branches, each of the branches, to then decide on the order that they're in the list. So if a branch has maybe 2 or more candidates that have been approved, then they'll be holding a hustings within the branch, and then the branch members are going to be able to vote on the order that they feel that they want those 2 or 3 members in the list. It's one thing that's very important to myself when we were thinking about setting up the party, and it's in our constitution, it's 1 member, 1 vote. So everybody has a say. They have the right to vote for, because we are members led, and I like to have as many members in the party involved as possible. So each member will be allowed to have a vote, and then people will then know how many we've got in each region standing. But then they have to be registered by the end of March to the Electoral Commission officially. So you'll find out in due course, Martin.
And hopefully you'll get some of the candidates to come on here and talk, because obviously they'll want to get themselves put forward in the central region.
Absolutely, we'd love that. That would be great. That would be fantastic. So as soon as they're approved, then I will let you know, and we can arrange for them to come on your show. That would be great.
And how do you get involved with Independence for Scotland Party?
It's very easy. You can go onto our website, isp.scot, where you'll find a Join Us button, and you can fill out the very quick forum and join us. You can find out all about us on our website, and we've got obviously Twitter and Facebook, and you can keep up to date with what we're doing. We've also got our YouTube channel that's got all the videos that explain the voting system that we have here in Scotland, trying to educate, because that's a huge thing, trying to make sure that people are educated onto what our voting system is. So you can find us on our YouTube channel as well, and try and maybe spread the word about the voting system. So yeah, there's quite a lot of different mediums. We're on Instagram, and which I'm not on very often. I don't really understand Instagram, but Twitter and Facebook are our main pages. But all the information's on our website, isp.scot.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's great to talk to you, and very enlightening about your party, and all the best for the future.
Thanks, Martin. It was nice meeting you.
Okay, so next week, that was Colette Walker, the leader of the Independence for Scotland Party. But next week we have Marion Fellows, who's the MP for Motherwell. Yeah, I do believe Motherwell. No. Marion Fellows, who's going to be on from the SNP and talking to us about the upcoming elections and upcoming stuff that's been going on. But until then, I will say goodbye. Marion Fellows.